Hello, everybody, and welcome to When There Are Nine poetry showcase of Moontide Press's latest anthology. This is a fantastic anthology, and I'm grateful to be here with you and experiencing in some selections from the anthology by some of the contributing poets. My co-host for the evening is Rebecca Evans. She will be your host introducing the poets. And aside from the poetry, you're going to get to hear a little bit about the poems written for this anthology by the poets and engage in a conversation with us. So we're so happy to have you here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rebecca Evans, one of the editors of this anthology. Rebecca, you are unmuted. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Eric. And first of all, thank you so much to Moontide Press for believing in this project and taking this project on. What an honor. And we started this project over 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, the death anniversary of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Just poets getting together. What we do, we talk about everything that impacts us on some level, and then we turn around and we write about it. We try to process it. We try to discover something about the experience in ourselves, and sometimes giving voice in unity and community makes a difference. That was really the impetus of When There Are Nine, this chapbook. And Shanine Harris, who's on the call, and also Ashley Kunsa, who's the other editor, we got together and just said, let's do this anthology. And we invited poets, and these poets set aside their time, their lives in the middle of a pandemic and COVID and crisis and chaos and all the stuff that's been going on for all of us in the last 2 years. And they contributed poems to this beautiful book. So today, please buy 100. And then buy 100 more for your friends. But I'm so proud of this book, and I'm so honored to be able to work with these beautiful poets and this community of voices. So now what was once individual comes together, and there's a conversation that started happening with these poems on the page, from poet to poet to poet, as we were putting this book in order. And so the poets are going to read in order that they appear in the anthology. And I can't say enough about each one of them. I have to keep it super brief. Otherwise, you'll hear me talking. You won't hear them. So I'm going to start with Catherine De Lancelotti. She is a Pushcart nominee, former recipient of the Cowell Prize, Poetry Prize, and the George Hitchcock Memorial Poetry Prize. I could list like all the things her poems have appeared in, Chicago Quarterly Review and Moth, but it is way too long. You just need to go look her up and read her poems and buy her book and be a fan of hers, because her words are beautiful. So without further ado, Catherine.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Rebecca. And thank you, Eric, for hosting this event. Moontide is my family press, so I was eager to be a part of this reading tonight and really grateful. Yeah, so the poem that I'm going to read tonight is the poem that's in the anthology. Shanine, who's one of the editors, when she asked me if I would write a poem for the anthology, I tried writing it for a few months and nothing was coming out. I was having some major writer's block. I watched a bunch of interviews with RBG and read all about her life, and I couldn't really, nothing was coming. Until I listened to one interview and about women's rights and what Ruth has done for women. And one thing that she was asked was, are things like what has changed? Have women acquired more rights? Are things better now? And Ruth, all she could really say was that it's better than it used to be. And that line really stuck with me because, yeah, in so many ways it is better, but it's also not where it needs to be. And the fact that that's the best we can do, is that it's better than it was, just isn't enough for me. So it's why I write, and it's why I'm here, and why I'm grateful to be a part of this amazing community of artists and poets. And readers of poetry, because I think that we are truly the counterculture and the ones bringing the change, just through language exchange, community, and stories, and bringing awareness to experiences. So the poem is titled "It's Better Than It Used to Be" for RBG, and it starts with an epigraph from the Bible, Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled, there was famine in the land. Ruth, you woke to your husband dead, splattered across your chest, traced a line on a map and walked mirage after mirage through the desert to escape famine. You gleaned barley on your knees, laid down at your master's feet, broke bread. Your mother taught you to take what you've been given with grace, to lick the wounds clean from his plate, the quickest way to get fed. You knew exactly what you had to do night after night, strategic, always kind. Your mother taught you that. It was a virtue of your sex, and you smiled, lips parted red. You knew the way out was from the inside or death, so you stayed by his side, took your seat at his table and wept. It's better than it used to be, you said, a tent over your head, children fed. Thank you. Rebecca, thank you. Rebecca asked me to say a few words just about the writing process and about that poem. And really the way I wrote that poem was I used obviously imagery and stories from the Bible. A lot of my work comes from the Bible. I grew up a pastor's daughter. The first poetry I ever read was the Psalms. That's how I learned about metaphor and imagery and language, really, was from reading the Bible. So a lot of my work is inspired from that. But I also looked at Ruth's life and took parts of her life. Like she was saying her mother taught her to be kind. You know, that was part of a virtue of being a woman. And, you know, Ruth really carried that into her life, all the way into her professional career. She was always kind and got along with everyone. And I think that was a strength that Ruth had, but also probably a weakness. In some ways, which we all, our biggest strengths are our weaknesses typically. And it was just interesting to me, just the conditioning that we all have experienced, but especially women, to be kind, to take care of everyone, to actually just do what you have to do to survive and to be safe. And that's a lot of what this poem was about. And I thought about Ruth with all those men, and working with all those men and trying to, you know, get things done and having to compromise. And that's kind of how the language, the story, and all of this came about. So yeah, and I remember I said it to Sheen, I was like, oh, I have something, I don't know, it's not good though. And I said it to her, she's like, your poem's done. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I did it. So poetry is funny like that, it can surprise you. And this one definitely surprised me. The ending couplet, a rhyming couplet at the end is always my favorite because it just ties it together and it's just like, bam, it's good. So I had that rhyming couplet in the end and I was like, this is done, sent it in, and really grateful to be a part of the anthology. So thank you everyone so much.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for that insight too. Just a glimpse into the artist's mind is always super inspiring on top of it. So I appreciate your words. Next up, we have Gail Brandeis. And again, like Gail's bio is, I don't know, 30 pages long. She's the author of the most recently, her memoir, The Art of Misdiagnosis, and a novel and poem, Many Restless Concerns. She has another new book coming out as well. Numerous works of art in Literary and Poetry Journal, along with the New York Times, Washington Post, Oprah Magazine, the list goes on, and her list of awards is incredible. She's just an incredible poet and fiction writer, storyteller, nonfiction writer. So without any more words from me, Gail.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you, Eric, for hosting us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm so delighted to be part of this anthology and part of this reading. It's such an important book, such an important woman we are celebrating. And my experience writing this poem was quite different from Catherine's, and I love that poem so much, Catherine. Oh my gosh, just so gorgeous. This poem was so easy, and not every poem was like that. But when Rebecca asked me to write something, it just spilled out because it was right there. I just had this connection that it felt ready to be written about. And then an object had come into my life that you will hear about, and I will show it to you as well. And the timing just worked out. So the poem just kind of was one of those, just like, bloop, there it is. So, this poem is called Tante Ruth. I think of her as Tante Ruth, Aunt Ruth in Yiddish, a truly great aunt, an older relative who might give me candy, give me advice, might pinch my cheek and remind me to speak my mind, to stand up for my rights, to never settle for anything less than equality, anything less than justice. My mother nurtured this feeling. She told me the true love of her life, her sister's psychiatrist, the married man she dated starting when she was 16 until he died 10 years later, his last name Bader, was Ruth's brother. She could have been your aunt, she said, had he not died, had he fertilized the egg that became me. I wanted to believe her, but couldn't find any mention of a brother with her lover's name in any of Ruth's biographies, and would never want any dad but my own, especially not a man who preyed on teenage girls, a man who could have been arrested for what he did to my mom, a man Ruth would have despised, would have dressed down had he been her brother, had she known what he had done. Still, I want her to be my aunt, my great aunt, my Tante Ruth, want her to still be alive. My sister, who is named for my mother's lover, I'm named for a pedophile she recently shuttered, a label we hadn't thought to apply to him before now, recently sent me a Ruth Bader Ginsburg menorah, the 8 candle holders spelling out I dissent, the shamus Ruth herself, the gold holder on top of her head like a crown chakra. She will be lighting the way for us this Hanukkah. Tante Ruth always lights the way. And I still haven't fixed her. I need glue Tide Press. But here she is. I dissent, Ruth, lighting the way.
I love that. Thank you so much. And yeah, the Moontide Press glue is on its way. Beautiful reading. Thank you, Gail. And I like the process of this poem I struggled with, this poem I had to search for, this poem was already there waiting to be, talked about. So it's so incredible to hear these background stories. Thank you. Rachel Ricks is up next, and she has, again, all these poets have numerous published poetry everywhere. Look up their names, buy their books, read their words, be a fan, support them. They're amazing. They'll inspire you in so many ways. Rachel, she's got poems published in tons of literary journals. She was recently shortlisted for the Billy Collins Fish Anthology 2020 Poetry Contest. So without further ado, Rachel.
Hi, thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Rebecca, Eric, Gail, everyone, Catherine. Okay, so I'd like to start with just a little bit of background about the poem I'll be reading, because it might be a little bit difficult poem to grasp. But so the impetus for tonight's poem comes from a book from my bookshelf called Cartographia. And it's a collection of beautiful maps from the world's largest cartographic collection at the Library of Congress. The maps and their accompanying texts journey beyond basic geographical facts to tell a story about human endeavor. I wrote this poem before RBG passed, but I found much like the works in Cartographia, her life remains a record of hard work, improved understanding, and change. So when I first sat down to write the poem, I was thinking generally about geography and people and how we are all connected. But I was writing the poem Cartographia, when I was writing the poem Cartographia, became a woman, like a real person to me. And so my passion behind this poem ultimately, I'll say, would be curiosity. So without further ado, the poem. Cartographia. Is your name written in sand or spirit? Or are you unnamed, wind child of the east with a beetle burnt stare? How far did you crawl to get here? Or did two rivers carry you on woven reed rafts across the ancients? If you could see the accordion curtain with tilted cosmic eye glow before evening, how golden oils through like gilded marsh, how heat and seven heads and seven sages cut their shadows, cut in and out of the wind while dark curls around crescent. Would you see gnomon or nestled skull buried in clay-baked hands? You might remember sow sounds and sheaves among barley fields, your chin beak-like, body barren. How can we cross-gather your memory? Keep hemming silt, hold chiseled charcoal wide-mouthed. Do you wonder why shark fossils speak when you carry the shape of an umbrella above your head and push it? Lining up each rusted nail with a given star, and all the shark's teeth begin to fall like arrows into Earth's abdomen. If all you own is a single Ionian coin, and only blackened seeds lie between you and the sun, can you hear skin colors spiraling? Is there hurt in your freedom? Is there freedom in your language, in opening or closing a heart, in tin tapping tin? Were you there when augurs heaved and slung the four quarters of the sky? How does what we have today fit with what you had yesterday? Error in shreds of linen more expensive than papyrus, stitched cape to cover a portion of the globe. Success in common ground between natural and cultural. There's still time to tell us what you know. Are you pointing beyond the bat-like nighthawk twisting in flight, happy finally to be alone? In historical hindsight, this means breaking into fragments fitting for pilgrimage, some diagrammatic style without a constant scale. An interstellar monk on a modern highway to highlight the holy. Was this you? Have your fingers traced the shape of artifact, the native substructure within us all? We are hungry insects and say science with stentorian speech. Is all you can dig after 1,000 years, spiritual, geopiety linear sequence with a wooden gate? Red and black ink turned to civilization.
I love that huge book that is like the same size you are, that you hold up. And I love maps and just, again, the emphasis from whence your inspiration comes. It's so incredible. Thank you for sharing. Next up, we have Marty Steffen, a poet, trail runner, mountain biker, in that order, who lives in Boise, Idaho, right where I'm from here. Her work has been published, again, numerous places that I can't stay here and list. So you need to just go find her and read everything that she's written. The Denver Quarterly Volt, the Greensboro Review, among many others. She shares her life with a gentle Great Dane and a charming African gray parrot. I just had to include that in introducing her because it might show up in her work. Anyways, Marty, it's yours.
Thank you. Okay, so I have a very good friend who's a lawyer who admires Ruth Bader Ginsburg very much. And she was talking about seeing the documentary about Ginsburg, and both she and her husband commented at the same time how incredibly hard she worked, that she just worked all the time. And I couldn't write a poem about that. So actually I wrote a poem about her iconographic image. You know, the glasses, didn't really write about them, wrote more about the gaze, and imagined her voice, and of course there's always her lace collar, which you can't leave out. And I realized actually if anyone read this and didn't know her, this poem may not make sense. So, but anyway, I assume we've seen pictures of her. So here it is. The gaze. Voice served that visage. Spoke for those muffled, gurgled, replaced, catch in their throats. Razor her gaze. Slicing to justice, nested in law, searching for our wings. Her lace collar was beautiful, not mild. That's me, I'm a minimalist.
I think that's the beautiful thing. Thank you so much, is the diversity and the variety as you flip through the pages of the anthology. Every poem, I mean, they each have a story of their own. And then, like I said before, they're each in conversation with one another. And there's a chorus that begins to happen, right? So the ebb and flow, the up and down, the staccato, the long notes. It's really beautiful. Thank you, Marty. Beautiful read. So Eric is going to read tributary poem of Elise Kuznets, who is no longer with us. She's Brian Turner's wife, and we asked permission from a previous press if we could reprint her beautiful poem, Harbinger. So Eric, if you don't mind giving voice to Elise while we're giving voice to RBG, keeping words alive.
Thank you, Rebecca. I'm honored to read this poem. In revisiting it today, to kind of get myself really acquainted with the words and to really feel the words in my body. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem, and quite. I mean, the title of the poem, Harbinger. I mean, it evokes this sense of doom. And in thinking and listening to all of you wonderful poets, and having read the book, obviously, and you know, edited through it and everything, there is a part of Ruth that, like, we were on a precipice, you know, and we still are, and it's this razor's edge, and it's a scary time, but I'd like to delve on the hopeful prospects that things will sway the other way. And I think that's what Ruth represented. Like, she was real, and she represented, you know, the hardships and the strife that we had ahead of us, especially these last 4-ish years. But I feel like that provided a sense of hope that we would have tilted on the other way of the razor's edge. And I really feel this poem in my body because of it. It was a pleasure to be able to publish this anthology. I want to give a huge thank you to, well, first of all, Catherine, because she was the one that had the idea of reaching out to me and presenting the idea of Moontide putting this out to Rebecca and her fellow editors. So Catherine, thank you so much. It was an honor. When you presented this idea to me, I was absolutely, yeah, I'm interested. I'm in. And, you know, I had a little bit of trepidation because I personally, as a poet and a publisher, try to not delve into the political on either spectrum, just because I feel a lot of times the political can be very didactic. But there's so much personal personal risk in this collection, I feel like. And I love all the poets, all of you who read today. I loved hearing your individual stories about how either you struggled or you didn't with this poem. And as Rebecca said, that they are all so individualized and unique, and it's anything but didactic. And I really liked hearing the struggle because, you know, some of you guys were like, how am I going to do this? But you found your in. You found how to make it personable to you, whether it was about maps or the Bible, you know, or just the personal story that was so like, oh, she could have been my aunt. It was just, it was just incredible. And even, you know, just figuring out, like, I couldn't figure out an in, so I went with just her gaze, her iconic look. So it really, this is a collection worth reading and a collection worth savoring and celebrating. So I'm glad we get to do this. And so thank you, Rebecca. Those are my 2 cents, because I did not write this poem. So I can't talk about my process, but I can talk about why this anthology was important to me to put out there. And so for all the poets in this anthology, those of you here today, thank you for trusting Moontide to put this work out there. I'm incredibly grateful and honored that you guys trust in Moontide, and thank you for being part of the Moontide family. Okay, so that's what I said. I'm going to read this poem now. Harbinger. Just another day in hyper-capitalist society. In my Facebook feed, news of rabbits and chickens tortured on meat farms, but I'm still not vegan, and I'm waiting to die myself. From cancer I may have gotten from soil or groundwater contaminated by nuclear weapons, and no amount of posting uplifting stories is going to fix that. And Lord, let them cease trying to control women's bodies, people's genders, people's desires. Let them stop hating people because of their color and ethnicities. I want to shake the bigots and racists till their teeth come loose and they lose their bite, till their tongues swell up in their mouths and they're stricken mute. I want to save all the slaughtered animals, save the seas and their inhabitants, whales, birds, the tiniest bivalve from choking on plastic. I want to purify the air of sulfur and carbon dioxide, scrape the lead from plumbing pipes. God, I need to do something besides dying, besides thinking about death and the neo-fascist politicians who lead a nation of people unable to think critically after 40 years systemic dismantling of the education system by the rich so their lackeys can make it illegal to prosecute corporations for poisoning the air, earth, water, and Jesus. Isn't it a kind of mental illness? Annihilating what you need to stay alive, for the accumulation of blind profit and the process of killing and murdering me, along with the people and animals I can't save, but want to, with all my goddamn fucking heart. But instead, I'm waiting to die, trying to find some last meaning in all of this. A warning, perhaps. You're next.
I think we're all a little speechless. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. I hope I did it justice. It's a good poem.
It's an amazing poem. And when we were looking for work, I reached out to Brian Turner and asked, would it be okay? Because he had the rights to Elisa's work. It was just such a perfect fit for this anthology. And we knew it as editors. And like Eric said, yes, Catherine, thank you for the intro to the Moontide family, but also to my fellow editors. I mean, having 3 women work together on this anthology, I mean, putting together the order of the poems and the editorial process, we really learned a lot, and we all had a lot going on. This was definitely a passion project for everybody involved, the contributors and the editors as well. So I want to keep the conversation going if possible. If anyone has a question for the poets, put it in the chat or just unmute yourself. But I have one question. I would love to hear from the poets who read, or even Eric as the publisher. What was unexpected for you with regards to being part of this anthology? Any part that was kind of a surprise?
Personally, this is Marty. I'm surprised at the community, quite frankly, and how rich it is, and how knowledgeable, and how extensive, and how visionary, and how delectable all this work has been. And in all honesty, I moved to Boise, Idaho from San Francisco, where I got my MFA at University of San Francisco, and the community there I knew well. And then when I moved here, it was kind of like, so long, God, I'm moving to Boise. And finding this gem here, I found many gems in Boise, but this particular gem is one that's right after my heart, and I'm astonished and grateful.
Eric, you're unmuted. Was there something that surprised you?
I just did not mute myself back.
Oh,
Darn. No, I mean, again, I just stand by what I said. Like, you know, I mean, I trust Catherine immensely. So when Catherine came with me with an idea and said, like, hey, you've got to take a look at this, would you be interested? I trust her. Having worked with her on her book Impossible Thirst, like, yeah, I don't publish people I don't trust. So when she said this to me, I was like, okay, this is going to be good. But again, it comes back down to that, like the how each poem is so incredibly individualized and unique. But like you said, it creates this chorus. And like I said, I there, even though I trust Catherine, I'm a little nervous of political stuff. Because it's just me. It's just how I have my politics, but I keep my politics, you know, close to the chest. And then the thing that I worry about is, like I said, is preaching to the choir, you know, putting out something that is celebrating Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Like, you just worry, like, is it just, like I said, a bunch of didactic story? But it's not. It's so personal, and it's so individualized, and getting to read these poems and seeing how, you know, how this great force affected everybody in such uniquely different ways, and getting to really just honor that was really, really cool. So I think I was surprised by the fact that I'm publishing something that could be considered political, but it's not. It's poetry. So I'm just surprised by myself, because I said I would never do this. And I have Catherine to blame, and all of you amazing poets, and maybe the editors.
that's awesome.
I'll
Rachel,
take the blame.
Rachel, were you going to
Thank you
say
for trusting
something?
me, Eric.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just say thank you for trusting me, Eric, and thank you for giving this book an opportunity to be out in the world. Because I thought it was interesting, because when you guys came up with the book idea, it was before, you know, everything started happening in the Supreme Court with Roe v. Wade. And I just found like the timing just seemed really serendipitous, and like just kind of almost perfect, like divine. And I think art has a way of doing that. And that's what I found surprising, was like, this book actually has more meaning after all the poems were written, because of the context of like what we're all going through right now in the world. So it's like this idea sprouted, and I think art is timeless. And art is cyclical, not linear. So it's like the muse or whatever, the creative energy knew that this needed to come out at this time. And I think that's, for me, that's a part of what I do with trusting work and the words and the language. I think it comes when it needs to come, kind of like what Gail was saying. It was like her poem was already there. It just she found a channel and needed to come out. I think that's kind of one of the mysteries and the miracles of art and poetry and language in general. So what I found most surprising and amazing was the timing that the book came out was more divine than we could have planned for. And I hope that it just continues to impact people. And that's what timeless art does. It's truth. And I think that's the difference between being didactic and being like truth telling, and just all the poems are from their own angles and they're all honest and real. So they're going to speak to all of us no matter what, rather than a political rant. I mean, even the poem that you just read, Eric, it's like, you could say that's a political poem, but then the way Lise was able to bring it into the personal, and that ending just kills me every time. But you know, that poem is timeless. So.
I agree 100%, and that's what I love about that poem is bringing it in to there is a bit of a political rant to it, but it gets anchored in this idea that the speaker of the poem,
Exactly.
and that is gut wrenching. I believe Rachel was going to say something, or maybe it was Gail.
Sorry, Rachel.
No, but I want to say real quick. It's a perfect plug, and then we'll move back. You were talking about timeless, and this is a conversation that keeps going. I want to use this opportunity so Rebecca can plug some future readings that are coming up, and then we'll go back to the conversation. So I want to make sure that did not get lost, because I thought that was a perfect segue. So real quick, Rebecca, I believe you have a couple things coming up, correct?
We do. We have about 3 or 4 more readings. Plus we have some recordings and interviews.
Is there a way for people who are interested to stay informed?
Yeah, so if you go to our When There Are 9 Facebook page, the events will be listed on that page as well. If you want to put your email in the chat, we can include you on the email list when we send out notices for that as well. And we have a When There Are 9 Facebook page, so you can reach us, or not Facebook page, a When There Are 9 website.
You want to share those links, the website and the
Yes.
Facebook, while I believe it was either Rachel or Gail wanted to chime in?
Yes.
Take it away.
Gail, did you have something?
I don't know if I have anything that hasn't been said. Just it was such a surprise and a delight to read the different poems and to see the prismatic approach to this one singular woman. And yeah, that's what poetry and art are so wonderful for, amongst other things, is getting a look into someone's inner world and how that person resonated with the same singular amazing woman. I'm realizing I could have brought one more thing into the poem, which I didn't, which was I had bought my dog a Ruth Bader Ginsburg costume for Halloween that year. And somehow that didn't end up in the poem, but perhaps there will be another version of it down the line.
So I did have one thing. I don't know if we had time. I'm just trying to figure out how to put it into words still. So bear with me, but like what I was surprised with is I don't consider myself a political person. And I try not to get involved. I kind of just stay away from media and a lot of that. And what surprised me about this project, Rebecca, I have to tell you that I really got into like interviews and articles and reading, and it was like I found my rabbit hole. And poetry does that for me. And I'm like, okay, I guess I am just like, you know, everybody else. I have my own way of I take my own route, which is through poetry. And so I used to get down on myself a little bit because I couldn't follow, you know, when people were talking about stuff, and I just sort of was quiet and didn't speak up. But I feel like, I don't know, I feel really empowered, I guess, that no, it's just that I have a different way of getting there. So thank you for that gift, Eric. Thank you. Plus you're badass. I didn't know that. Thanks for Moontide.
Wait, what? Just call me badass? I'm gonna use that in a blurb.
Okay.
And it's recorded.
Awesome.
So we have it here. Thank
you.
Anyone else about the surprise for them at all? Or some turn that happened? I agree with, for me, I agree with everyone, and Catherine, I can agree with you more, the timeliness. You know, you push and push and push. We were trying to get all the edits done, and you're trying to get something done in what you feel is a timely manner. But there's a bigger picture timeliness that always is choreographed for us. And I trust that too. And I'm always thrilled and excited, especially in hindsight. You go, wow, that couldn't have worked out any better. Or I'm so glad that didn't work out. Sometimes you say that too. So this is the timeliness of this with all that's going on in the world is so significant, which I feel makes this a timeless piece of art and work and dialogue and discussion that needs to keep going and keep continuing. So I'm so thankful for everyone contributing. And I'm surprised by the timeliness. I think that's been amazing. So did you want to say something, Eric?
No, I was seeing how you were closing that. I was going to make sure that people knew where the links were in the chat and stuff like that, but please.
I was actually just going to say that. So I put a couple links in the chat if you want to check them out. The next reading is on the 21st of August at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, whatever time you're in. I can't do math right now, so you hopefully can figure it out. Anyways, we have several readings coming up next month as well. Moontide will be doing another reading on the anniversary when Ruth Bader passed, and so that will be on September 18th. There'll be a live reading here in Boise. That date's still to be determined, and some podcasts and recordings, and so just a lot of fun, just a community. And that's our hope here, is this is not just a poetry reading, you show up and you listen to poem after poem, but really you become part of the conversation and part of this community. And we keep this going, not just now, but hopefully year after year after year. And I'm so glad everyone carved out time to be here and to join us. So thank you for that.